Welcome back to the channel of truth, trust, and transparency. Guys, it's coming down to the wire. I'm pretty excited. Massive night overnight, 398 subscribers left to hit my subscriber goal by the end of the year. We have, I'm recording this on the 5th of December, which means we have 26 days left. 398 divided by 26. We need to be hitting 15 a day. We're still on track. So if you've been getting any sort of value from these videos, please subscribe or let me know what I've got to do to subscribe for you guys. Now, as you may or may not have seen, Spotify did its Wrapped. We went out on Everything Property podcast and said, if we're part of your Spotify Wrap, please tag us or let us know. Had a young gentleman reach out with actually a question. I thought this would be cool to put into a video because I know a lot of the people out there that watch these vids or listen to the Everything Property podcast are at a younger age and looking to get into development. And the question goes like this. Dave, I have one question for you. I'm 20 and I listen to the show every day. If you were my age now, with everything you know from speaking to developers, investors, and builders, how would you actually start? Like, what would your first few moves be? What would you avoid, and how would you set yourself up so you could become a serious developer over the next decade? Sorry, one last question. What's your golden nugget? Awesome question, and I thought I would dedicate this video today to go through probably five pieces of advice. Obviously not financial advice, but 5 things that if I was talking to my 20-year-old self, here's what I would tell my 20-year-old self so that I could get into the position I am today. And look, I'll be very honest, 20 years old is a fantastic time to start developing, to be able to get out there and make first purchase, to put money away. So good news is 20 years old, you have plenty of time. And if you've watched any of the episodes on Everything Property, this is one of the first things that I said back to him. I said, if you watch any of the episodes on Everything Property, the good news is that there are plenty of people on there that I have interviewed that have made shocking first and second or maybe third purchases, and they have still been able to recover it to go on to make 6, 7, 8 figures in massive portfolios and even in the development space. So don't think if you're out there and you've maybe made a shitty purchase for investment property number one that it's game over, especially if you're that young, because you have so much time available. Just know that if you get on the right track and you notice your mistakes early, time can fix all wounds. So the 5 things that I would suggest, let me run through them. So number 1, and it will always be, is skill set to build this. So this particular kid is 20 years old. He's working as a project manager. Unbelievable opportunity at your age to be learning how that construction phase works, from pricing, from contracts, from scheduling, from time taken to builds to finishes, all that kind of stuff. It is exceptional. So you need to work on, and anyone else out there, is building up that skill set. If it is you want to get into development, and what I would give my 20-year-old self is work on establishing and building a skill set, how I'm going to get this. Now, for me personally, what it ended up doing is working in architecture, then in property development, get that skill set. If you're out there, you can do it a few ways. You might be able to and be fortunate to do that in your 9 to 5. Now, I don't know what everyone's job is. I know this gentleman's project manager, so that's an awesome way. And if we look at sort of that lifespan of a development, we have acquisition, and FISO is probably the start. Then we have DA. Then we have some sort of construction certificate. Then here is when it crosses over to PM territory. And then we start construction. So you've got experience now across half of this process, which is good. If you're 20 and you've been to university or you've done TAFE, it tells me that you're about a year, maybe a year and a half in potentially, or you're still working on finishing your degree. So spend the time required. You want to also work on getting the life cycle of a process. I see a lot of young people, they'll spend 6 months here, then they'll change and they'll spend 8 months and they'll spend a year. You want to stay in a job long enough, hopefully it's a good enough job, that you can see that entire life cycle from, you know, your bosses and your employers finding that site, doing that DA, or saying, hey, this is it, this is what we're going to do. So you're there from demo, you see what happens, the demolition stages, you're there from site cut to forming up a slab, pouring concrete slab, you're there through that whole construction, handover, finishes, defects, absolutely everything. So as a PM, you're going to have that sort of experience, which is great, which means you just need to stay in the job and see those projects through for the life cycle. Getting the acquisition DA stuff together, that is consultancy, that is coordination, and that is numbers. That is easy learned. So the first bit of advice I would be is skill set. Now, if you're in a job where you don't have exposure to construction, then that is when I'll lean on things like my YouTube videos. You'll lean on things like podcasts. You'll lean on things like events. You'll lean on things like people that have done it. You know, maybe you can spend some time with people. Maybe you can get mentored. Maybe, you know, there's those sorts of opportunities out there and available for you to pay a little bit of money or some money to learn the experience from someone else that has spent 5, 10, 15 years in the space. So number one is always going to be about building the skill set. Number two, and this is probably the biggest one, is you need to start off with and build a residential base in, if it is investing. Now, I'm not saying, you know, everyone has to go out there and invest, but me, if I was giving advice to my younger self, it would be out there and start as early as possible to build that residential base. What does that look like? It's probably going to be anywhere between 2 to 4 dwellings. And why do I say this? Because if I say at 20 years old, I'm going to require you to, for the purchase of this next site, you're going to come up with $300,000. You're going to spend, I don't know, it's a 700 grand site. Maybe you're going to come up with 210 grand, 30% deposit. There's going to be some stamp duty, then there's going to be a DA, and it might cost you 350 grand, right? For someone to come up with that sort of money at 20 years old as a PM, or, you know, if you're young in your 20s, that's going to take you a very long time to try to save up. So you're probably not going to be able to save your way to that money, especially when you get into the bigger sites and you're needing 4, 5, 6, 7, 800 grand. No developer is out there saving their way to the money. What do? They have a residential base. Because if you're starting now at 20 years old and you can get your hands on one property, and then as your income grows and you're able to save money, potentially you can get yourself into a second property. Now, even if they're 500K each, right? 500K, again, if we look at, you're putting down at least a 12% deposit, meaning you have a 440K loan. And if I'm just working off, you know, our APRA standards here, I say 440 grand, divide that by 6, meaning you would need an income of about 73 grand, which is pretty close to what a uni grad would be on these days. And if not, maybe there's a weekend job that we can pick up to get that availability to get the first purchase. Because the thing is when you're in those first years, if you can lock in at least even one house, right, in your early teens, in your early 20s, or somewhere in your 20s, right? And we look at a situation where we can look at a little bit of the data, and that's what, like, we've got the course for, and you get something that grows by 10% in the first year. That's $50,000 of equity. Now, obviously, that's not going to break the bank. Year 2, that property goes to 550. Again, if we have 10% there, you make 55 grand. And then if it goes back to, and then it's worth, say, 600 grand, and then 605 grand. If that goes down to 7, then we make 42 grand. And over the space of 3 years, we've then got a property that's worth maybe 650, or it could even be a little bit more. Now, if we've got a 440K loan, we're starting to build up a little bit of usable equity, $80,000 or $80,000. Now, that's not gonna get you to development overnight, but over time, and we add in savings, and we add in a second investment property, we times up by 2, then we're at 160. Then you've got, another 100 grand saved. Then we're at 260. Then we're sort of getting to where we need to be. So that's why I always say start with a residential base. Another reason you start with a residential base is you have so many more levers you can pull. If you just try to save your way and do your first development and something goes wrong, you have variations, you need more money, the bank val doesn't stack up, and then you need to pull 200 grand out of your ass, you're working 9 to 5. How are you going to get that money? You're not. I'm not going to advocate for you going to mum and dad with your hands out like this. If you've got properties, maybe we can do a little reno on one, and we do an equity release. Or is it that we've owned one for 10, 12 years and we can sell it off and make a profit? Or we haven't got a valuation on one in a while. We do a valuation and okay, well we can pick up some equity there. Having that sort of base gives you the opportunities and the flexibilities of being able to work some things out, right? Having that base gives you those options. If you don't have the base, then there's very limited options. Now, as well on top of this, and as I say to people, is as we saw in yesterday's videos, like, well, if you own something for 2 decades, and let's just say this, like, you buy 4 of these properties, you've taken equity out, and we go down this development venture, and as I say, and the simple graph is, we put 500k in, and then we get, 500k back, and then we maybe get 500k or similar, and then we go out and do this development, and it's over 3, 4, 5 years, 6, 7, 8 years. What you don't realize is that, okay, you're pumping out money here, but you've also got these properties here growing on the back burner that you haven't even thought about because you're making so much money in development. So that's why I always say start off with a residential base. And that probably leads into number 3 is grow that income. Again, however possible, and you got to look at it, and I always think sort of 2 to 3 years at a job is a really good time. 2 to 4 years is probably, great times, is a great time to say, okay, I've acquired the skills that I need to step up to the next level. Is that at my current employer? Is there KPIs that I need to hit? Is there something I can work towards to get a bonus? Is there something that I can work towards to get a salary increase? Is there, if you're going from assistant PM to PM, what does that roadmap look like? Is it 2, 3 years? Is it I need 3 years? Or, I can look online and see that PMs are looking, they need 3 to 4 years experience, and that would bump me up my salary up 40, 50 grand, You just need to be diligent and work towards growing your salary. Number 4, growing that salary, growing that income. So it might be changing jobs. It might be looking to do bonuses. It might be just putting in that hard effort, those hours. It might be as well. And I never sort of advocate and go out and start a business. I say go out and get a second job, because if you're trying to buy that first house, for example, usually if you're looking at sort of 400, 500 grand, you need to put together sort of $80,000 to $100,000 in savings. That will take 2, 3 on those lower salaries. So it might just mean, and again, live your life in seasons. It just might mean, okay, you know what, I need to pick up a weekend job for the next, every second weekend for the next 12, 18, 24 months. That's the season that I'm going to live, and I'm going to have to forfeit, maybe going out with my mates a couple of times. But the benefit is that it's a short period. It's just going to be 12 months. It's only going to be every second weekend, so I can still live my life. But what it's going to do, it's going to bump up my salary. Maybe you're on 60 grand. It's going to give me an extra 13, 14, 20 grand a year so that I can get into this first property, get this first property in the door. So I always say grow your income. There's plenty of ways to do it. Depends what you can do in the time and effort required, but remember, grow that income, live your life in those seasons, knowing that you're going to end and move into a new, better season in the near future. The next is going to be save. Obviously, growing your income's good, but save diligently. This can be difficult, especially when you're in your teens, when you're in your 20s, or even in your early 30s. You have mates, they want to go out and all that sort of stuff. Again, live your life in seasons, but you need to be smart about it. I used to have this thing where if I worked my weekend job and I got money from my weekend job. That would be my sort of discretionary spending allowance. If I didn't work my weekend job and I had none of that money banked up, then I didn't go out and I didn't spend that money. So it's like, okay, let's plan things out. When are the events? When am I free and when I can work? And maybe you use, second job's income to fund those sorts of things that you want. Or, okay, if I want X, I need to sell Y. I'll get rid of Y if I want to upgrade to X. At no point in your teens or 20s should you be financing or buying a brand new car as well, in my opinion. If you're going out and spending probably over 15 or 20 grand for a car, I think it's an absolute waste of money. At that stage as well in your life, when you're young and like me, and my advice to yourself is, if you can stay at home for as long as possible, if you have that good relationship with your parents, make the most of it. You're not paying any rent. Shit gets expensive when you get older. Trust me when I say this. So save diligently, put that money away in the bank. Look to have some sort of alternative income stream if you can, if you need to go out, if you need to spend money on stuff, and do it that way. Try to save as much as your salary as possible. As a general guide, 30% is the goal. If you're in your teens, 20s, maybe early 30s, 30% is the goal. Lower than that, we need to look at our expenses. Higher than that, you're a freak. If you can get it above 40%, you're going to do amazing things. Staying at home as well, you should be able to pump that stuff up. I interviewed a guy, a really good mate of mine, that I actually met working a weekend job. His name's Matt Burnett. You can go on the Everything Property podcast, look it up. He was 23, 24 when he bought his first property. I've been talking to him lately, and that property now, I think 3 to 4 years later, has made him about 300 grand in equity. He doesn't want to get into development, but it's a good example. He was earning something like $700 a week as an apprentice panel beater, and he was saving like $600. He'd give himself like $150 a week for, fuel, some sort of expenses, phone, blah, blah, blah. And that's it, and then he was being able to save so much more. He was saving more money, and go to that episode and have a listen to it, but he was saving more money than I knew some of my friends who were on very big and stable income. Number 5, things that I would avoid was your question. Here's some things I would avoid, like the plague. Avoid, number 1, 5.1. Off the plan apartments. Now, don't get me wrong. I've worked for developers that have sold these. I don't think they're a good investment. I think you make so much more money when you buy an established home, even at that 400 or 500 grand price range. Avoid off the plan like the plague. Trust me when I say this. I've heard way too many horror stories, sunset clauses, blah, 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 with developers, all that kind of stuff. Valuations not adding up. It's a huge risk. And one thing I'd tell my audience and for my younger self is always avoid off the plan. Following that as well is going to be house and land packages or land. Obviously, if you're at this age, you're not fully understanding how the process works, house and land packages or land and then building on top of it. There's a good chance you're not going to get that feasibility right at the start, and it's going to cost you more money if you think it's an investment than you think, and the yields maybe won't add up. But house and land packages, anyone that's out there selling something too good to be true, the SDA space is full of that too. Anything house and land, I would say avoid that. We want to buy an established house in a pocket that is already built out, established, and has the infrastructure around it to support it. Number three, and probably the biggest one for me personally, if I could go back, was buying with siblings. Bought a property with my brother, which is good at the start, but as we got older, and I've got a good relationship with my brother. I love the bloke. He was very diligent and good at what he did for his work, that his company wanted to expand another practice of what he does under his name. So he was sort of focused on that, has had a few kids, and just is cool to operate that and sort of live his life that way. For me, I'm on the other end. I'm building, developing, I want to scale to the moon, blah, blah, blah. So when we first bought, we were here, we were aligned, but as time went on, we sort of drifted apart. And that's nothing wrong with that. I go down my course, he goes down his course. But one thing I would say is to think really hard about, and I've done a YouTube video on it, so I might link it and have it pop up here, but is avoid that purchasing with the sibling. I get the argument, it gets you into the property quicker, but just the refinancing, the ownership of it, the maintenance of it, the running of it, it just turns out to be an absolute nightmare. If you can get into that property yourself, As I said, if you're looking at $400,000 to $500,000 property purchase, we're looking at 60 to probably 100 grand required. Use your own money and do that yourself. You will thank me for it when you've built a really nice base. Because if not, and you've got, say, you only own 2 properties, one of them's with your brother or sister, your sister doesn't want to refinance, or is off work because she's had a kid, maybe you can't get the refinance, she's on the loan, she wants to sign, she can't sign it, she won't sign it, then you've missed out on one entire property, meaning you can only use one. If you've already got the equity out, that leaves you stranded. So if you can build that resi base yourself, that way I can build scale and control my own destiny, and I'm not relying on somebody else. Now, last but not least, golden nugget. And I've put this in other videos before, but I'll write it again so you guys know. And I'll draw you a cute little diagram so you guys understand it and that we're on the same page. So give me a quick little second to clear most of this. I'm going to assume that you made notes because I just rubbed out half of it. But I will say is to run a development, right? You need the site, you need capital, or the middle part. So site, skill set. My golden nugget is focus on the skill set. Focus on acquiring, just learning as much as possible about the process, about construction, about DAs, about building, everything, because that is what will get you to become the best developer. Why? If you've got the site and you don't know what to do, you cannot develop the site or you'll lose money. If you've got the capital but don't know what to do, then you've just got the capital. But if you've got the skill set, you can find the site and you can find the capital. Because again, you've got the skill set, you can start to piece a deal together and say, hey, it might be an uncle, it might be a friend, it might be an old boss, it could be anyone in your circle or that you meet or that you start to meet and network with and say, hey, I've got a site, this is what I'm doing, these are the numbers, this is my skill set, I require the capital, and then you can do a bit of a split, you can do a bit of a joint venture, you can do something like that. Or if you've got the skill set, then you're going to know what you need and what is required to run that deal. And I've done a couple of development videos on that about funds required and all that kind of stuff. But if you focus on just establishing that skill set, everything else will flow. Capital is easy. The site is the challenge and then the numbers. But if you have the skill set, you'll be able to find that and able to piece that together. Again, if you do find the site and you find someone with capital, the first thing that they're going to say is, okay, well, what do you know and what are you doing? And if you can say, oh, here's a site that I'm doing myself, I'm going to use the entire team from my own site on this development, and here's what everything costs, and it's the exact same here, it's going to give that person with capital the confidence to go, oh, he knows what he's doing. Fair enough. If you're doing it there and you're doing it here, might as well. Whereas if you try to just put together a site with someone that's got capital and you don't know what you're doing, or you don't have the skill set and they go, okay, well, what are you doing? Or what's it going to cost me? Absolute nightmare. So my golden nugget is build the skill set and the rest, build the skill set, the rest will follow. I hope there is a bit of value in that for you guys out there, younger guys and girls when they start out in property development. And as I said, I'm putting out plenty of free content on it. If you haven't already, go back and watch all the property development videos. And I'm starting as of next week, I believe, my series on property development and townhouse development as I go behind the scenes in one of my projects, which is going to be really exciting. If you do want to watch that, remember, hit subscribe so you can see when it comes through. But as always, guys, I'll see you tomorrow.